We've been driving down these wiggly roads for quite a while now. It was a fair way from that little parish church that we've just been in. And that's a bit of a thought, clambering over these brackeny hills with up to 10 children to go and make your peace with God. So I imagine they were fairly hardy people. And poor old Catherine was pregnant from 19 to 40 from what we can see, so it really can't have been much fun clambering up and down here with wains pulling at your skirts and another one in your belly. Hi, Meg. Thank you for coming out to this beautiful bay.
Hi.
Now, I've been told that you might know where the mythical Innive might have once been.
It is there, but it isn't mythical. It's very solid. We head along the road here.
Local historian Meg Douglas is going to show David where his family lived.
Well, they were obviously fit.
You couldn't be anything else, could you?
No.
Now you know why I said bring TARDIS.
We could have done with that. I think it's time for the wet weather gear, Meg. It's not...
Thank you.
It's beginning to get a bit Scottish this way.
Right, well, a bit Scottish, is that it?
Yeah.
OK, we'll go and shelter in the house.
But I mean, there was... Charles and Catherine had 10 odd kids, didn't they?
That's right.
So I would hope they had somewhere at least this size.
This is the height the house goes. It doesn't go any higher
As
than
high as this?
Yes.
And they wouldn't want to be as tall as me, would they?
Living in the village community of Innive, the MacLeods were cotters, Gaelic-speaking subsistence farmers. They paid their landlords rent in kind, with kelp from the beach, peat from the hillside, or wheat when the harvest allowed.
Were they completely self-sufficient, or did they...
They had to be self-sufficient. There was nothing else they could be. Potatoes, main crop.
Which they grew themselves?
Which they grew themselves. And they had oats and barley.
Right.
Well, they used that to make whiskey.
Right.
They had to make something.
Well, they had to have something
to cheer them up in the
I mean, for goodness sake.
This was their water supply.
This is what they washed and drank?
They washed and they drank and everything. And if...
I feel I should sample it.
Go on, then.
Just for the sake of the ancestors.
All right, you'll find it lovely and clean.
Well, apart from the bit of bracken. Yeah, it is. It's very clean, actually.
It is very clean. It's lovely.
It's your actual Highland spring.
But they would have a well, they would build a wall around because they'd keep the cattle and the sheep away from the spot where they took
So they wouldn't drink out of that, necessarily?
Well, it's part of that or something.
Right.
But I mean, when you think of cows and children and the pollution...
Yes. Have I just drunk out of a stream that lots of sheep have peed in? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Nice. Well, I'm
but
glad
you
I
see,
did that.
It's fast flowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you are above the dead sheep, which is further down.
Oh, that's a relief.
Yes. It's what is known as...
With that in the skull, I'm going to be lucky to escape Mull without some kind of deadly disease.
You're getting your antibiotics.
Yeah.
But in the 1830s, the MacLeod's way of life changed forever.
We've just come down through all the lands that the people of Innive farmed, David.
Right.
And this shows us the big house.
So they were farming to pay this guy here?
He was the one that cleared the whole of this area.
As the Industrial Revolution gathered pace, Highland landlords realised that sheep would be a better use of their land than cotters like the MacLeods. The meat and wool were valuable commodities in the cities and factories of the south. So landlords began a process of clearance, forcing families out of their homes. Some used brutal methods, even burning houses to the ground. In Innive, evictions began in 1814. Families like the MacLeods had their rents raised and were served with eviction notices when they couldn't pay. To make sure they never returned, the roofs of their homes were burned.
I never considered that we had a link back to those times. It's the sort of thing, you know, that the clearances are something you hear about in school. And it feels very far away. It feels like something that happened to people millions of years ago. And of course it's not that far back. That's what I suppose has been quite shocking, to sort of have traced that link.
Clearances and economic migration transformed the landscape and the lives of its inhabitants. By the end of the 19th century, Scotland's highlands and islands had become one of the most sparsely populated areas in Europe.
It's the inhumanity of it that's just a bit bewildering, that people can do that to each other. There's something about finding your own bloodline mixed up in it and going and standing in the places where it happened that brings it home in a way that history books don't quite, I suppose. You know, and seeing MacLeod, seeing your mother's maiden name connected to it at such close quarters. It's grim, really.
David's great-great-grandfather, Donald MacLeod, left Mull and joined thousands seeking work and a new life in industrial Glasgow.
This would have been the last thing he saw, I suppose, of his homeland before he set off for Glasgow to establish the MacLeod line. They were the underdogs and they were right at the bottom of the pile. But, you know, they came through it and they reproduced and were still going. And I'm rather proud of that. It's curious to think that if the vagaries of fate hadn't pushed Donald off the island and into the big city, then our family history and indeed my life could have been very different. So I'm heading back to Glasgow, back to the big city, just the way Donald went, and I'm going to find out what happened to his grandson, my grandfather Archie, who was born in Glasgow but married an Irish girl who was my granny, Nellie. She was a great granny, very indulgent of us grandkids. Was always bringing us sweets and presents. I regret that I never really found out a lot about where she'd come from. And her husband, Archibald MacLeod, was dead long before I was born.
Donald's grandson, Archie MacLeod, was the third generation of the family to work in Glasgow. But his talent for football took him away from the city to Ireland, where he married Nellie Blair in 1938.
Well, that was where he met, of course, your gran was in Derry when he was playing there.
Right.
She, I mean, obviously that was their sort of big thing, the big romance.
So she was kind of going out with one of the local football stars. She must have been quite...
And she of course, was a local beauty queen at the time.
She was the posh spice of her day.
Well, I would hate to think of your Gran MacLeod as posh.
Well, certainly her marriage.
I can't possibly imagine your Gran MacLeod ever being linked to posh.
But she had a favourite phrase that will live with me till I die. She used to say, "Now, Sandy, God bless Ireland and the Protestant clergy." You know?
Yeah.
And that would come out from time to time. But it was always, we all just laughed.
Yeah.
You know, that was Nellie.
I'd be fascinated to know if further back in the Blair saga there was anything linked to the Troubles in the early days with our family. Because we were never, I mean, that was never spoken about within the family circle. And I would certainly be fascinated to find
You don't remember harbouring terrorists under your bed or anything?
No, but you wonder.
Hi, John.
Hello, David.
How you doing?
Well, yourself?
Very good. Good to see you.
But first, David wants to find out more about grandfather Archie.